But to start off with it, I mean, I'm just gonna be honest. I really don't like TikTok as an app. I've never. I mean, I think I've used it before. Somewhat like when it was like really new was the only time I ever used it, and I'm not a fan of it. I don't really like how it just started off as a replacement of that app Musically, if people remember that, which was even worse. Like I just feel like I feel like TikTok's improved since then. It's somewhat of a better app now, but I still not a fan of it overall. And I guess that's a part of a thing where I'm not emotionally involved in this at all. I really don't care that much if it gets banned either way. But I will say I never thought it really would get banned. I think the reason for that is because it feels like it's been talked about for so long. You know, there's been a lot of times where the government's talked about. Back when Trump was president, I think they were talking about doing it, although it never really happened. I don't remember if he was for it or against it, or I don't think it ever got to the point where because this bill about it got to the president's desk. I don't think it ever got that far with when Trump was president, but or maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know, but it's just been discussed for so long. I just kind of figured it was never going to happen and nothing would come of it. And it's just wasting time. But yeah, apparently there was an actual bill about banning TikTok that got to the president's desk that was signed into law. But I think a lot of people don't really understand that. I guess technically it's not really as much a ban of TikTok that it is, according to the Associated Press, where I saw this, that it's ByteDance, which is the company that owns TikTok, has to sell it or else it will be banned. Because I guess the issue is who owns TikTok, because there's concern that it's a company that could give Americans, personal information to the Chinese government, which, that's a concern, I guess. So that's really the main problem with it. And they don't have a problem with the app itself exist. It's not that it was so bad that they figured it has to be banned, which is, the only argument I could really present for why. But no, apparently it's because it needs to just be gotten rid of by them. And that's something that I guess, if the app is going to exist still, then they need to probably start working on that. But anyway, moving on from that, I think that the thing is, it's not going to happen quickly because ByteDance is going to sue. Although I don't really know why. I mean, I guess I understand why in terms of, when anything like this is passed, like a new law is passed, or when, a lot of times when court decisions are made, there's going to be a response where, the side that lost basically isn't going to take it quietly. So I understand. But I thought, there must be some logic in selling it, I don't know I guess if I was the CEO of ByteDance or whatever, I would see a point in selling it. I don't think it's that bad of an idea because, I mean, just think of how much money they could make from it. I mean, TikTok, if I'm not mistaken, is the most popular app right now. So it seems like it could make a good amount of money, and they could just make a similar app, right? That was just available in China or something. Well, I guess that's the other thing. It's not getting rid of the app entirely. I think it's like, I'm not trying to spread misinformation here or whatever, but I think it's getting rid of the United States version of the app, something like that. I don't know. So I think that it just seems like it would make more sense to just get this over with and just sell it. Although I did read something else where I didn't make a note of this. And by the way, during the segment, I should make clear that my note taking was not as extensive as it usually is. I've said before on the show that usually I make a list of notes of things I wanted to talk about. Not really full sentences, but they're pretty extensive usually. And because not really until a little bit earlier today did I even decide that I wanted to talk about something like this. I barely made anything on this topic. So I'm more just talking from memory, probably going to ramble a bit more. But, it's the last episode for a while, so I guess that's okay. But my point I was talking about, I had read somewhere that there aren't many companies even interested in buying it, and I think a lot of them feel it would probably just be too expensive to buy if they wanted to. So maybe it will be harder. I don't know. I would have thought it would have been easy, but it depends on how much money how much they want to sell it for. And I guess they have justification. Probably it's going to be in the billions if they wanted to sell. And I'm sure that's how much TikTok is worth considering how many people are on it, which surprised me as well because when you go to TikTok, maybe it's because they count scrolling through videos, because I'm pretty sure Facebook videos count that as well when putting their view counts up. But I assume that they're more or less doing that because they're doing that because that makes it seem like there are more views. I'm not trying to assume what they're doing, but the view counts on TikTok are crazy. I mean, they get way more views than YouTube, or at least maybe not way more, but I've seen TikTok videos that get in the 10 million range, and that's not even considered a whole lot. So I mean, I know it's a lot for most people, but that's not as much on TikTok as you would think. So I think when people are scrolling through videos, I kind of count that as well. Most TikTok videos are shorter than YouTube videos. So that's another thing. But yeah, I mean, I just think that I would assume that TikTok would be worth probably in the $1 billion range. I don't know how much YouTube was worth when Google bought it, but it's probably worth even more. Well, that's not saying that much because YouTube was much smaller back then. You couldn't. I don't even think you could make money on YouTube yet, and with inflation and all that, it was probably much less. But I mean, frankly, I think it's probably worth somewhere in like the tens of billions of dollars range. Maybe I'm completely wrong about that. I don't know, but I would assume it'd be the most expensive app to buy. So maybe that's part of why people don't want to buy it. But there's got to be someone out there, some rich guy who has way too much time on his hands, who has a stack of $10 billion sitting around that he wasn't going to do anything with. So I don't know. Although I guess maybe it'd be best if Elon Musk bought TikTok, because then he can show that, he could ruin any app in the utmost of swiftness and the utmost of ease. So, let's see what he can do with TikTok. I don't know. I mean, it's another app where it's already ruined, as far as I'm concerned. So let's see if he can just drive it straight into the ground even further. But also, according to the New York Times, about a year ago, China's Commerce Ministry said it would firmly oppose a sale of the app. And I don't really know why it's their business. I mean, not just in terms of, why they're a TikTok's company owned by a Chinese company. So that's why I believe they have any concern with if it gets sold or who owns it or what. But I don't really get why they would have a problem with, a sale of the app, because the Chinese government doesn't own TikTok technically, right? I think, although I don't know, because China is like it doesn't have to assume that it doesn't own it just because, like, well, in the United States, the American government doesn't own Facebook or Twitter or whatever. I mean, that's obviously, our governments are completely different. Well, in some ways, but so I guess it's not a fair comparison to say because our government doesn't do this, China's government wouldn't do that. But still, I don't really get why it's China's business. But maybe it's because TikTok just makes so much money for China that they kind of feel like they have a stake in it. Maybe there's a comparison somewhere in terms of the American government, but I don't know. But at the same time, even if they do sell it, I thought at first it was kind of just they were selling who's in charge, like the American portion of TikTok. So wouldn't that not affect them like at all? Or maybe I'm wrong on that. But in addition, I don't really get why they have a say in what the United States does and what it bans. I mean, in terms of like trade wars and stuff, I understand why China would have an interest in America, like banning like Chinese exports or something like that. I get that, but does TikTok fall into that category? I don't really know. But I will say it would be pretty funny. Like, okay, we'll all be dead if this happens, so I guess I shouldn't call it funny. But it would be pretty funny if, World War III happens finally between America and China, and that's what sets it off, that America banned TikTok. Like, whoever's living through that, in one of those countries that no side cared to bomb, they're going to think that's pretty funny looking back when they're not scrounging for food and trying not to get radiation poisoning. So, yeah, I mean, this isn't a particularly long segment, but I did want to say just in general, because we're only kind of wrapping up now, and it's been probably, less than 10 minutes, I think. But just a few final thoughts, and I'm not going to give my whole opinion on if TikTok should be banned, like, legally, because, I don't even, I barely even know enough about this to decide if TikTok, it's fair for them to be banned. I mean, I guess the concern, like I said, is that the Chinese-owned company can, like, give Americans' personal information to the Chinese government. And I've heard from the Associated Press article that the defense of TikTok believes no adequate example of that happening has been produced. And if that's the case, then, that is something that should impact the decision. I think that, I find it a bit funny because I don't think there's any secret that American social media companies, get their users' personal information and they can do whatever they like with it. Maybe it's because, I don't know, we're a democracy and China's not, that there's going to be concern about it. But I will say I'm not saying there's not valid concern. In fact, if anything, I think there probably is valid concern about it. But I don't really know if the making them do this is justified. And I'm not really here to say for sure. I mean, that's kind of the thing. When I originally was going to do this segment, because I've thought about it for a while. I think last week I considered it back when it was just kind of being discussed if it would be banned or not. I've given it thought, and I thought I wouldn't, but if I did, I'd want to really do my research and make an informed decision about whether or not I agree with it. Although the thing is, I thought about it, and it really doesn't matter if I agree with it or not. I'm just talking about what's happening. I'm not really going to go into if it's right or wrong. I mean, I'm just reporting the news here. I'm not giving an opinion. I'm like the 60 Minutes of KUGR. I'm not gonna give an opinion or anything like that. I'm just here to tell you what's happening. But I will say I feel like there's genuine arguments on both sides. The ones who say that, that TikTok shouldn't be banned and that TikTok should be banned. I think that's like a nuanced thing. There should be discussions about it. But the one thing I think is dumb is that when there's people who are against it, and it's just because Not because like they're pointing out the hypocrisy in American social media companies doing what a Chinese social media company has done, but more or less just people who are upset because Congress is full of old people who don't get TikTok, and it's my favorite app, and they need to stop banning it. Those like freaking jerks don't know what they're talking about, because that's not a genuine discussion on this. I mean, to say just because, like, one thing I dislike about politics, a lot of things in politics, is when people just get involved with an issue they don't understand at all, which I guess, okay, that's what I'm doing, but I'm admitting I'm doing that, and I'm saying that I'm basically not giving an opinion, so it's fair when I'm doing it. But people who don't really get the issue, the nuance of an issue, I'm not saying every issue has nuance, but the ones that do, and their only point is just they don't like how things are going because they just, on the most surface level aspect, care about something, and so that's why they get involved with it. Because just saying you don't like it because you like TikTok and you don't want to think any deeper than that, that's ridiculous. And again, is that kind of what I'm doing? Because I'm saying, I mean, on a personal level, I'll just say I support TikTok being banned just in terms of I hate TikTok and I want it like gone. I mean, I hate how it's ruined people's attention spans and how it's the most annoying, flashy, ridiculous app that serves no purpose that other apps can't already solve. But I don't mean that in terms of legally it should be banned. I just mean on a personal level, I just dislike it. It would be cool if it was banned. Because of just how much it sucks. So is that what I'm doing? Yeah. And if people are doing that in terms of they're saying I don't care about the legal aspects of it, I just don't think it should be banned. That's fair enough. But don't pretend to say whether or not it legally should be banned or not, and just say I like TikTok and Congress and the president are idiots. So that's the problem. But I will say I also think it's funny how the issue. I don't think people talk about how this might impact like the election or whatever. And I'm gonna be honest, I really don't think that the people who use TikTok so much... Well, first of all, a lot of people use TikTok frequently when they are kids, so who cares what they think? Well, not who cares what they think, but they can't vote, so, the president, the government, they're not listening to them. But at the same time, I think the people who use TikTok frequently don't really vote in general, so I don't think it's going to affect anything like that. But it could, which would be kind of a funny twist. Because again, like if, let's say, whoever wins the election, it can be determined that it's because of their stance on the TikTok issue, and that's what pushed them over the line. And then, they start World War III. I mean, TikTok starting World War III, there's a lot of possible futures where that happens. And I'm, if I could guarantee my own survival, I guess I would like to see that. But I don't know. I think that TikTok, should it be banned? Maybe not. But I just kind of like that it's being, because I just am tired of seeing it. So anyway, by the time I come back, well, I'm not going to do segments on when I come back on every single thing that's kind of related to something I talked about that happened. I mean, especially because there's going to be too many, and realistically, whoever's watching the show or listening to the show when I come back are probably people who didn't listen to it the first time, because statistically, there's probably no one listening to it the first time. But whoever's listening, I don't want to do a segment just recapping everything that I missed, but maybe I'll mention what happens with TikTok. I don't know, but like I said, it's not going to get banned, especially not in the near future, because that's the other thing. All this like litigation and courts deciding what's going to happen with it. I've heard people talking about how it's going to be maybe like months or years before anything even happens with this, which is why I think a lot of people, when they saw the news about TikTok, expected like that day it was just going to go black. For now, and at least for the foreseeable future, it's still going to be operating as normal as far as I know. So I'm pretty sure the people who use TikTok a lot, who were going to vote just based on how this influenced their opinion, I think they're just, because of their attention span, they're going to have forgotten about this all even happened by the election. But we'll see, I guess. I don't know. I guess if that really matters so much to you, what happens with TikTok, that you'll vote based on that, I mean, I guess think about it, because, in 7 months, when everyone's safe in their seats for another 4 years, you can't do anything about it. So I wasn't trying to turn this into a civic thing about voting now, but I guess I'll just put, since this is the last, discussion portion, talking about something new, at least for a long time, yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. If you seriously agree or seriously disagree with what's going on with TikTok, then remember to vote, I guess. Especially if you disagree with it, because like I said, I think the people who use TikTok by tomorrow might forget that this bill was even passed on Wednesday, and by 20 minutes are going to forget that they even heard this segment. So might want to write it down.